I'd like to say a huge thanks to Max for joining us. Max, if you follow sort of NoCode on Twitter and various social networks, Max's name pops up an awful lot because he runs one of the sort of premier NoCode communities in the UK. I actually met Max on a community building course at the start of the year when I frankly was just at the beginning of learning about NoCode, and we were talking more about community building, but then it turned out that we have that kind of Venn diagram of community and NoCode, and yeah, we got on well enough to ask Max to come and speak at this thing. And Max has also taught on one of our accelerators that we run here in Codebase, and has given various NoCode talks at many things that we've organized over the last few months. So huge thanks to him for joining us. But if that's okay, I might just pass over to you at this point, Max.
Yeah, of course, go for it. For what it's worth, I'm also enjoying your shirt, so that's another vote from me virtually. Yeah. Yeah, really excited for this one. Thanks so much for having me, Ollie. Yeah, absolute pleasure. This is my first kind of hybrid event, so hats off for like pulling it off, because that is quite the feat. From, as you say, from a AV point of view, but I reckon we can just get into it. So today I am going to be kind of giving you a whistle-stop tour of NoCode, to set the scene, set the context, so you can kind of go into the day with some background knowledge to then understand all the cool, interesting stuff that the other speakers are going into. So what are we actually going to be covering in the next 20 minutes or so, hopefully? So what is NoCode? The $1 million question. Why should you care? Case studies, so actually real world examples of this stuff being used. What does the future look like? And then a little bit of time for some questions, so you can probe on all the stuff that I've been talking about. So hopefully that sounds reasonably exciting to you guys. So let's get into it. Okay, so I guess the first question I'll probably answer is, so who am I? So essentially, as kind of Ollie mentioned, I run an online community helping people learn to no code called 100 Days of No Code, and also helping kids learn to no code with the aptly named NoCode Kids, and I run a small micro SaaS tool for communities. But let's rewind back to 2017, which is when I was very much just an ideas guy, and a very, very non-techie one at that. I even struggled with, quite embarrassingly so admitting this, but even Microsoft Word, like I was really at the lowest end of that technical spectrum. So I always had kind of these weird and wacky ideas, tucked away in countless notebooks, and essentially just not doing anything about them. That is with the exception of one. And this, as you can see on the screen, was an Airbnb for storage startup. It was kind of a cool idea, won some awards, raised some money, but we did that all without a product. We were all a non-technical team. So we did the classic thing that you do. We took the money we raised and splurged, a good wodge on developers to build this idea. Months and months have passed with little to show for it. What was worse is once we had a somewhat functioning product, the time lag between our user needs and the development speed made it really impossible for us to iterate fast enough in response to all this feedback that we were getting from users. It eventually failed, and the line was drawn under that experiment. But what stuck out from this experience was the need to become more technical. That seed was planted in my mind that, geez, like if I'm going to do another thing like this, I need some ounce of technicality to kind of be able to at least build prototypes or something beyond Microsoft Word. So I joined a few coding boot camps, but before actually starting, rather conveniently heard about this world of NoCode. I dug deeper. I took the plunge by announcing to my massive 50 follower Twitter audience that I'd be learning to NoCode for 30 minutes a day for 100 days. And I started this March of last year. And essentially, it was this decision that led me to working on the things that I mentioned at the start, and has played a huge part in my transition from ideas guy to builder. So what do we actually mean, though, by NoCode? How have I kind of made that leap and that transition? Well, it's thanks to NoCode, but as I said, what does that actually mean? So NoCode on its own could really mean anything. For example, I can write in my notebook without code. I can play tennis without code. I can go for a walk without code. You kind of get the point. This is why I love this tweet from Lacey Kessler, who rightly called out the distinction between saying I make things without code versus saying I make something without writing code, the key word there being writing. So what we really mean by NoCode is essentially a set of tools that give us the power of code without actually having to write it. So instead, we can create websites, apps, chatbots, databases, automations, and more visually, giving rise to a new way of building products. So what you're seeing here is the bubble editor. So Ollie mentioned that in his opening chat, where you're essentially dragging and dropping components onto a screen. And this is much like building with Lego. So you can build things visually online now with these tools, just as you would build something from your imagination with Lego blocks. So these tools all come with pre-built components you can essentially drag and drop onto the screen. And these being equivalent to Lego blocks, and would be things like text buttons, maps, login flows, input fields. And it is your job to essentially stack these components in a functional and usable way, just as you would with Lego. And this kind of analogy works on a micro and a macro level. And what I mean by this is you can connect on a micro level these components inside one tool. And then on a macro level, you can connect different no-code tools together to be greater than the sum of their parts. So one more analogy, just to kind of reinforce it a little further, is we can compare no-code to IKEA. So whenever we buy something from IKEA, whether that's a desk, a wardrobe, or bathroom fitting, we still have to assemble the pieces to that thing together, which is just like entering a no-code tool, and you can see a list of these pre-built components that you can choose from to build the thing you want to build. And although you won't have as much power or customizability as you would if you were starting from scratch with code, just like IKEA, you're not going to find a more accessible, cost-effective, or faster way than building with no-code. And it's about time that we're able to do this. I mean, only 0.3% of the world's population can code. That is like saying that only 1 in 400 people can write. So no-code is essentially empowering the 99.7%, which is pretty exciting. So just like Shopify enabled the drop shipping economy, and YouTube and TikTok enabled the creator economy, no-code is firmly enabling the builder economy. This new tech is really arming the rebels, arming those that have got these ideas and want to build them, weren't able to before, but now are able to, the 99.7%. And by multiplying the amount of builders we have in this world, it has some pretty cool outcomes. So we're giving rise to three things: a more diverse range of problem solvers, more inclusive digital spaces, and more accessible careers into tech. So essentially, knowing how to code will no longer be the threshold. No code will be. And as builders, as entrepreneurs, as creators, as I'm sure many of you are in this space, this hybrid space today, we can now execute and validate ideas on our own terms, finally, without dependency. So this makes building faster, leading to a quicker time to market for our MVP, which allows us to spend more time generating insights from users, iterating and validating our core assumptions. Time that would otherwise be spent building, i.e. doing it the old way. But you're probably wondering, what can I actually build with these tools? Well, the answer is anything, or at least most things. So we've approached the point where there's a no-code tool for that, is the new way of saying there's an app for that. As you can see here, you can build all sorts, from landing pages to SaaS products to databases and more. And really telling of the power of these tools is how people have built applications with similar functionality to Facebook, Airbnb, Uber, Netflix, and more, all without writing any code. So hopefully that kind of gives you a feel for the power of these tools at the moment. And don't worry, we're not creating, or I'm not trying to create noise out of thin air here. Real products with real users with real impact are all being built on top of these no-code tools. And today I really wanted to just give you a few examples of some of those case studies to bring it to life a little bit more. So up first, as you can see here, is missing Black people. So Dominic Norton, who's part of the 100 Days of No-Code community, essentially built a directory that amplifies the search for missing Black people. It took him an hour from idea to execution, and he has been able to raise awareness on this issue by going viral on Twitter first, within the space of 2 hours of actually building this MVP, but also gaining 20k petitions signed on the matter to put pressure on the government to look into this more seriously. So you can really start to see the time from idea to impact is getting shorter and shorter with these no-code tools. We've also got another example for fun this time, which is Bad Unicorn. They build a new bad business idea every 2 weeks as part of a product studio, all using, of course, no-code tools. And their landing page is currently on Webflow, and they've been featured in Forbes, Bloomberg, and TechCrunch to again give you a feel for the scale of what they're doing. Another example is Otter, which is a marketplace that matches parents who need childcare with stay-at-home parents. And they have validated their idea with purely no-code tools before them raising 28 million from some pretty reputable venture funds. And lastly, we have Coins, which is essentially a mobile app helping students pay off their debt, and is run entirely off the back of Bubble's infrastructure. And it's processed thousands or millions, in fact, of transactions and has thousands of users. So this is a good example of no-code scaling for a product or service. So what does this all mean? Let's just kind of step back a little as to the impact of this. Why should we be like fundamentally excited by this step change is because no code is allowing us to gain the maximum amount of leverage over our time solving real world problems that matter to us most. And that is all whilst allowing us to kind of express our creativity, to build in public, make connections, diversify our income, and build habits that are sustainable. But it wouldn't be fair for me to evangelize like this and to speak about all the amazing things that this new movement is giving us without actually addressing some of the haters. And to be fair, this is not me addressing the haters. This is Drew Riley, who runs a very informative but concise newsletter called trends.vc. And he did a report on NoCode and allocated a little section here on haters or NoCode haters and kind of responding to them. So he talks about the first one. So, well, of course, there's code. No-code tools are built off the back of code. So it's not a no-code versus code thing here. We need code to be able to actually create these products, make them more powerful, so that we as non-technical folk can build more powerful things. No code will eliminate developer jobs. I don't think I need to answer that, but no, they won't. And that kind of feeds nicely into that previous point I'm making. All problems can't be solved with no code. Well, of course, absolutes are usually false, as Drew eloquently puts it. And then the last point, no code tools can't scale. Well, yeah, this is one that is more questionable, but actually, as these tools mature, we're seeing more and more examples of no code being able to scale with the amount of users that are on your platform. We saw the example with coins. We saw over COVID-19 many applications with hundreds of thousands of users amidst the crisis and people needing to gain access to resources on a mobile app that was built entirely on no code. And that completely didn't flinch with all those users. So we're starting to see more cases where this can be answered. Now that we've kind of addressed the haters, I think it's right only to now speak about what is next for this space. Where are we heading with no code? Well, I think firstly, there's going to be more tools, and they are going to cover even more niche and diverse use cases than we currently have. They're going to be more powerful tools. So what I mean by this is they're going to be more extendable. So there's going to be a blurred lines between no code, low code, and code, where these products can be injected with code, so you can kind of extend it further than the no code components give you. They're going to be more customizable from a design point of view, and as we say, they're going to have greater performance and scalability. And lastly, we're going to have more of, hopefully everyone here today, more builders. So one thing to bear in mind, though, is when anyone can build, authenticity outweighs access. So that is just something to bear in mind as more and more builders emerge. And that is it from me. Yeah, I hope that was interesting, and would love to take some of your questions today.
I'm not sure if you caught that, Max. If my mic was muted, then you may have not heard the applause that you got just there.
No, I didn't, unfortunately, but thank you.
Give you one little quick sort of, there you go. No, thank you so much. That was super interesting. Yeah, I like when I see your talks, how they kind of evolve and how your thinking is evolving. I think in line with mine about like thinking not just about how not just how sort of quickly you can build all these things, but some of the problems we need to overcome, and how we can do that, and how we just need to address these things. And I love that point that you made about the sort of the things that have grown to scale in the last 18 months. When I spoke to Mariam, who's giving the third talk today, and I suggested that NoCode was for building MVPs and prototypes, she got a bit annoyed at me. And she was like, whoa, no. We're past that now, we're into building things that can operate at scale. And I think, there'll be lots of things that we need to think about doing that, beyond just the tools themselves. But yeah, hopefully we can have some of that discussion today. I have figured out Mentimeter. Do you keep the questions coming in? There's actually loads already, but you can also upvote as well, where you can't downvote like YouTube, right? They removed that. So I'm going to go for the audience questions first, if that's okay.
Of course.
So the most upvoted one is, I guess this could apply to, you have so many different projects. I don't know how you find the energy for this stuff, but so do you use a hybrid model of code and no code, or just no code? Yeah, and I guess, with your thinking across all of the different things that you do, is there sort of areas that you think one is stronger than the other?
Is that in terms of, I guess in that question is around, like, how do I choose between whether to build something with code or with no code, or how do I? That would be, okay. Yes, let me stop sharing quickly. So so here I am, big screen now. Good question. So to be honest, it's normally quite an easy answer because I can't code. So that normally comes down to, well, what is my skill set and my resources, being able to no code. I guess you could extend that. So an example with the SaaS, micro SaaS kind of tool that I'm building, that is actually coded, like gasp. But it's actually, I'm sure, I'm going to be booted off the Jackie Weaver style, booted off the Zoom call. But I think if you have the resource to be able to code. So for me, that was knowing someone in the 100 Days of No Code community that could actually code, and they offered to help me build this thing. That just came down to lack of time and needing someone else to build it for me. But generally, the default would be no code because that's the only option available to me in most circumstances.
And actually, let me ask a sort of adjacent question, because you were talking about how you were going to do a coding bootcamp, and actually there are two coding bootcamps in the room today. So maybe they'll be doing a no coding bootcamp. Like, do you think that there is more opportunity for that kind of stuff in the next few years?
Yeah, in terms of more sort of no code bootcamps, you mean? Or yeah, definitely, for sure. I don't see why not. I mean, I'm in the last week of 6 with the most recent or the first 100 Days of No Code bootcamp, if you could call it that, or cohort. So that's definitely something that's happening, and I'm sure we'll see more of it. So yeah, go for it.
And one thing I was meant to ask, if you're joining us on Zoom, I think some people have been raising hands and things like that. If you can use Menti, so the link that's in the chat, to ask questions, that would be very helpful, because that's how we're going to keep these going. But yeah, no, for sure. I'd love to do something more structured to learn no code, because I just figured it out myself, and I feel a little bit sort of, I don't know, out of my depth sometimes. So I think the most upvoted question is, what no code tool would you suggest to a total beginner? Yeah,
that's a good one. So I kind of see what we teach at 100 Days of No Code is focusing on like the leanest, meanest kind of stack that will give you like 80% of the results in like 20% of the time. So they're really intuitive, beginner friendly, but also quite powerful. And one of them you'll be hearing more about today, which is Softer. So I'll quickly run through what that is, what that stack is. So I normally miss one off just because I can't remember it, but there's 5. The first one is Glide. So essentially being able to build mobile apps. The next one is Softer for simple web apps. Then you have Zapier for simple automation purposes. Notion for kind of organization, productivity, whatever you want to use it for, personal sites, which you will hear more about with our next speaker, if I'm correct. And then Airtable, which is kind of the back end to all your projects, or lots of them. So in those 5 tools, you have a database, a mobile app builder, a web app builder, an automation thing, and a productivity / organization space all in one. And those kind of tools shouldn't take you longer than, like, at a surface level, a few weeks to learn. So yeah, I would say that is where to get started, if you wanted to.
I feel like you need a handy kind of acronym for remembering those.
I know, yeah. I was fortunate that I remembered them all today, but normally, yeah, there's always one missing. Yeah.
I quite like Niall's WAM's stack of Webflow, Airtable, member stack, and Zapier.
Yeah. I need one of those. Yeah. Maybe Niall, if you could, make one of those for me, that would be ideal.
Very cool. I'm not that familiar with Softer, but I just love it. Max taught a session about it on one of our Creative Accelerator cohorts, and it was just amazing to see within kind of 2 or 3 hours, people had built fully functioning web apps, having never done any code or no code before, and it's just very cool to see. Sam, I'm probably going to point you out at some point. So Sam is the man on the ground from Softer in Scotland. Amazing. So hopefully we can get you to do a workshop or something at some point soon. Yeah. Cool. So it's quite a good one, actually. What's your favorite thing about NoCode?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think, obviously, we can talk about it in a more like serious respect, like MVPs and like accessibility and all those things, which are amazing. I think to kind of like, the thing that strikes me about it is just how people are bringing their weird and wacky ideas to life that would never have happened beforehand. So I'm kind of seeing this rise of like side projects that people are creating as a way to express their creativity. And I think that, to me, is kind of awesome to see, because, as I said at the start of the call, all those ideas would have just been stuck in notebooks otherwise. So being able to express your creativity is probably the funnest and like coolest thing about NoCode. And then, yeah, we can get to the accessibility MVP stuff later, but that on a fundamental level was what I like about it.
Me too. I have so my priorities are generally sort of, my family, then code base, then my no-code side projects. And underneath that, like, I really want to make like a point and click adventure game in Bubble, like the kind of old LucasArts adventure games. Like, I'm sure you could do it, but at some point I will launch that project. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without, I don't think Bubble was really built for that, but why not?
Why not? Yeah.
Someone has suggested Zangs, by the way, for Zapier, Airtable, Notion, Glide software. I think that's pretty good.
Nice. Yeah. Stealing that, definitely.
Yeah. Here's a very practical one. Could you build something like menti.com? So I don't know, did you see that Mentimeter, the app we were using with no code?
Yeah,
right now, live in front of us.
From what I know about it, which is very little, I'm gonna just say yes. But I think the functionality, like in terms of like the upvoting, like taking in questions, and being able to visualize that, is fundamentally, like, you can do that. But I will hand that question over to you, Ollie, because you know about this platform and you know about Bubble, which I'm assuming is the platform you could do this in. Yeah, over to you.
My screen, I'm going to do it. Yeah, no, I mean, I certainly think you could build Mentimeter with Bubble, for sure. I'm already like mapping it out in my head. The thing I've discovered with Bubble, which is my favorite no-code tool, is just I can't believe how much you can do with it. Like, every time I think I've reached a brick wall of like, oh, I couldn't build a proper app with this, the community is really amazing. They're very supportive and will help you, with any problems you come across. But it's just like, I have built like fully fledged web apps at this point, and I think something like Menti would probably be fine. It probably wouldn't look nearly as nice as they've made it, because one thing Bubble teaches you is that you are not a designer, and you really need to get some of that design support. But yeah, I think you certainly could. Yeah, we'll try. How do you find tools for specific applications, e.g. databases?
In terms of so finding different database tools, essentially. Yeah, it's interesting. So you've got you have obviously Airtable, which is kind of the front runner in terms of databases in NoCode. You could also see Notion as a database, because they have that, and I'm sure Francis will speak more to that. But then if you're kind of looking for something more robust, that is more extendable with code, and kind of just even probably more scalable, in the sense of you have more than 50,000 records that you can have in one base, which you can't in Airtable. I don't think. You would probably be looking at something like Xano or Backendless, which are kind of two backend database, sort of hefty, more robust no-code tools that are less friendly, and that I would look at if you're needing something like that.
Like the idea of unfriendly no-code tools. Someone in the chat is asking if we can kind of note down the some of the tools that we're talking about. We'll try and do that at the break. We'll just kind of take a list and write them down, because that might be useful for people who want to follow up on these things.
Of course.
Sorry, there's so many questions. 22 questions you've had so far, although one was just a comment on my shirt. So I'll call it 21. So this is a really interesting one, actually, I think, especially from the startup space, because this is something that comes up all the time. I wrote a blog post about being a non-technical co-founder about 1.5 years ago, which we now quite often forward on to people to just understand how difficult it is to find a CTO or a technical co-founder. And my view on that has completely changed in the last year with NoCode, that actually there's another avenue you can explore, which is you could build it yourself. But this person has asked, we have external teams of developers at present who we go to build things. Do you think we'll see similar teams of no-code builders?
Yeah, of course. So we last time I checked, there's about 50 plus no-code development agencies kind of in existence, and I'm sure that number is increasing by the week. Just like there are new no-code tools every week on Product Hunt. So yes, absolutely, there are teams of people building bespoke no-code products as part of a development studio, and they may specialize on a certain tool like Bubble, or something like Zapier if they're an automation-led agency. But yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a huge opportunity in Scotland. I don't think there are any in Scotland, by the way, like no-code agencies. Like I've done one freelance MVP built in Bubble for someone, and I guess an agency is just like 3 freelancers, in a big coat. Maybe I am the no-code agency, but I think it's something that is a huge opportunity if people want to sort of think about launching this, because the results that you can get are very, very, very fast and cost effective as well. So yeah. Please, if someone can start a no-code agency after today, that would be just wonderful. Bear with me one moment. Too many questions. I've just figured out that Menti has a button to remove questions that have been asked, which I should have been doing this whole time. Can I give you a technical question?
Go for it.
Sorry. What's your opinion on extending no-code tools to add generic code execution models for technical users, like add a JavaScript module? Do you see signal for that often?
Wait, could you put that in plain English? No. So I'm just trying to. So you're looking to, when you say add a Java. This is how I'm non-technical, so you're finding me out here. But like when you say add a JavaScript module, like what does that mean? Yeah.
We're probably the worst people in the world to answer this because I'm also non-technical.
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess creating the ability for no-code things to talk to code. Like, I mean,
yeah. Okay.
I guess there's pre-built. I'm sorry if I'm messing up your question, whoever asked that. I guess, certainly my experience with Bubble is that there are a lot of, very powerful API stuff built into it. But I don't know, maybe it's more broadly about, sort of more generic code talking to no-code tools.
Yeah, no, it is a good question. And I'm seeing more when I talk about extendability, that is essentially it, being able to inject code into no-code platforms. So you're looking at some tools like Builder HQ, which is kind of fully extendable now and a developer's dream, because it kind of sits in that weird space of no-code, low-code, and code, and kind of in the middle. But even softer kind of allows you to again, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong. I know you're in the room, but obviously add code in some places. There is a custom code block in Softer. Is one example. So yeah, that is happening more and more, and tools are more extendable for sure.
Yeah, I think it's still early days, right? And this stuff is going to get easier for things to talk to. I mean, Bubble is, probably one of the industry leaders, and they just raised like $100 million, from basically bootstrapping before that. And I think a lot of that money will go into making it a bit more of a complete tool. Hopefully. This is a great question. They're all great questions. Sorry. This really plays into my day job quite a lot. But have any corporate or national organizations adopted no-code into their digital environment?
I don't have my finger on the pulse on that. I know lots of like, I mean, in terms of answering the question of should bigger organizations be doing this, yes. As to like which ones, I don't actually have examples off the top of my head. In terms of how they would actually use it, I know lots of big corporates have innovation units and kind of labs. I mean, that would be one to kind of cook up quick prototypes, but yeah, and obviously automating processes. But Ollie, I'll pass that back to you. I'm not sure, you may have some bigger insight there. Yeah,
I'm going to chicken out slightly and use it as a teaser for the panel that's going to be happening this afternoon.
Nice.
I think that is going to be one of the main points of conversation in it, because I think it's a really interesting one that it is very difficult to get these new systems into place in larger organizations with good reason. Procurement exists for good reason, but how can that work for everyone involved, I think is a very, very important question. So yeah, we've got just 2 more minutes, I think. Then we're going to take a little break and we're going to open the windows, and you'll have time to grab coffee and mini bagels and, have a chat with each other just for 5 minutes. But I need like a favorite questions button as well on this. Sorry, I'm new at this. There was a really good sort of, here we go. I like this one just for a final thought. Hang on, I've lost it again. So this is sort of, it's more of a general one, but what makes you optimistic about the future? They've not even mentioned no code.
Wow, that's huge. Yeah. Well, where do I start? Yeah, no, I don't know. I'll put it through the lens of no code, as that's what we're doing today. But I think you can look at a few indicators. So as Ollie alluded to, there is an injection of cash and funding in this space. Webflow have raised, Coda have raised. Softer have raised, like all these tools have raised money. So there is money sort of sploshing about. So that is one thing. You're starting to see bigger startups, or at least scaling startups, use these tools. So that is another indicator of success for no code. and there are just more people in no code. So I think the one thing that I am very eager to see with this no code movement is more people actually using no code that wouldn't have otherwise been building or using it beforehand. So people outside the tech bubble is kind of where I'm interested in how it will impact. And that is why I'm working on No Code Kids, to kind of essentially get them young and push, no code into the kind of curriculum from an early age, so that anyone that's going into any industry will actually have no code insight or awareness or skills, whether they're athletes or whether they're like in HR or whatever. So that is kind of the bigger question, I think, for the future of no code, is how will it spread beyond the tech bubble that we're in at the moment. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, listen, thank you so much. Insightful as always. Can we give Max one more round of applause?
I can hear it this time. Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much.